Hello everybody, it's Josie here. The video I'm going to be doing today is going to be a slightly lengthy one, so sit back, get some refreshments. It's basically on my favourite books of all time. I've seen a few people do these recently, and they've got like top 5, top 10s, that type of thing, but I couldn't really narrow it down to a number, so I've literally just grabbed books off my shelves, and I will caveat this with current. These are my favourites. Some of them have been on here for ages, some of them are newer editions, but this is kind of the current mood of favourites. They span quite a few different genres, so what I've done is I've bucketed them into a few genres. And also when I was looking at these, I was trying to think of like themes. And I realised that one of the main things is strong female-led stories. That's what I love. And strong female characters, so not your kind of run-of-the-mill cutie pie characters. I like women that are complex, that are interesting, that are kick-ass, that kind of play in the shades of grey, let's say, that aren't necessarily what you expect them to be as well. And I think it makes for more interesting characters and books. I'm very character driven when it comes to books. Yes, I love plot as well, but characters kind of almost come first for me. And also, I love kind of anything that tugs at my emotions, whether it's, you know, good or bad. Some books are heavy to read and they're going to give you almost negative emotions, but that's fine, because I think the worst thing, you know, a good book for me is it hits you emotionally and it makes you think about it as well. So the worst thing for me is just to be bland. So that's kind of the common theme. So what we'll do is, let's start with contemporaries. So speaking of dark female characters, Girls on Fire by Robin Wasserman. This book just caught me off guard. I thought it was just going to be like a YA, you know, female friendship kind of story, and it is so dark. And it really delves into these really complex themes of obsession and kind of psychological issues, and this friendship between these two girls, but also the relationship, and it's like a love triangle. And I mean, it does say in the front, it starts with a suicide and ends with a death, so this isn't a happy-go-lucky book, but it is phenomenal, and it's at the top of my list of rereads. So, announcement, let's stop this video. I have almost finished my entire TBR, so by the end of November I will have finished all the books on my TBR, which I'm really happy about. I had almost 100 books on there at the beginning of the year, which was ridiculous. So now finally I can pick up new books and read them straight away. And I can also do my reread project, which is what I'm going to be doing for December. This is going to be at the top of my list. I'm going to put it in a video, talk more in depth about it, because you can see it's quite tabbed up. It's a book that I really love. And yeah, I want to talk a bit more about it. So going from the dark to the light, this lovely book over here is Going Off Script by Jen Wilde. I just did an entire Jen Wilde video about their work and how much I love it. This is my favourite book of theirs at the moment. And it's set in California and Hollywood. I've realised that is something that I really love in fiction as well. And it's this wonderful group of friends that sort of band together to right a wrong. And on that kind of vein is this book over here. It's Everything Leads to You by Nina LaCour. And again, set in the movie industry in LA. Very sunshiny, beautiful female romance in this. Again, in this as well, loads of queer characters. Girls on Fire. That is definitely another theme. Like, I love queer fiction. So definitely a theme with all of these books, well, almost all of them. But this one is just, these two books, they just make me happy. They make me smile. They're wonderful, lovely reads. There's emotional depths to them, but they're also kind of on the happier side of the scale. So if I want to smile and have a good time, these are the two go-to books for me. And then talking about Hollywood, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a book that, from the cover and the title, I never would have picked up. I'll be honest. I never would have thought it was my kind of thing. And then people were talking about it and saying, you know, you need to read this. And I did, and I'm so glad I did. Another one that's tabbed to death. And this is about a starlet telling the story of her life and about her 7 husbands and who was really the love of her life. And I wasn't really spoiled for this, which was really good. So I'm quite happy that I wasn't spoilt for who the love of her life was. But suffice it to say, Evelyn is actually, again, one of these really kind of complex female characters. She's not black and white, good or bad. And I really love that about her. She has this wonderful range of emotions. I think Taylor did an amazing job writing this book. Absolutely love it. So the next one, let's go to series. So these are like duologies and series, but I'm counting a duology as a series. So the first one we've got here is these two books. So we've got Dark Cathedral and Pagan Moon, both by Frida Warrington. Dark Cathedral's the first one, Pagan Moon is the follow-up. And as you can tell, these books are covered in plastic. I first read these books probably in my very early 20s. And they've been with me all this time, so I must love them. They are about, I would say primarily about paganism and witchcraft and religion. And really religion, wanting to oppress ideas and oppress people and oppress women. And they are dark. Frida Warrington does an incredible job, beautiful writing, but just really dark themes. And again, these are on my top of my reread list because there's been a few, I just said reread list. It's been a few years since I've actually read these, and I'm dying to delve back into them, and I will do a video on these because I feel like they're underrated and they're really damn good, but heavy. The next one is Pages for You and Pages for Her, which is somewhere up there, just to pull it down, by Sylvia Brownrigg. These two books are what I love about them is, first of all, they're lovely female romances, but complex ones, not everything ends in a happy ending. Remind me a little bit of Carol, but also I love this. This one is set at college and university. Love anything set at university. Far too few books are. And you get to know these two characters, and then the next one is set years later, so you kind of it's like, oh, what happened to them, which is really great. I love that. You very rarely get that, and that's why I love the series. Again, I think it's one that's underrated, and I might do a reread and talk about it a bit more, but if you're looking for a great female romance and kind of also what happened to them years later, it's really good. I'm going to take a drink of water. So FYI, I'm sick, so I might cough. But anyway, the next one that I've got here is The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Again, I've done a whole video on Becky Chambers' work, but this series is one of my favourite sci-fi series. It's one of the ones that's just made me want to read loads more sci-fi. And I think what Becky Chambers does is she has character-driven sci-fi. This first book is probably my favourite in the series still, but it's set on a spaceship, and you have this motley crew of human and other species characters, and it talks about their friendship and about loyalty, and there's again a female interspecies romance, and also this book and the rest of the series also delves into that idea of what does it mean to be human. And we talk about AI, what does it mean to have emotions, to have feelings, to really be alive and live, and just amazing, gorgeous, wonderful. Just love these books. Then the next two are part of a series. So I particularly like these two. There's another one called Ironside, but this is Tithe and Valiant by Holly Black. Again, these are from way back when. And I know some people don't like these. I really, really love them. And maybe there's nostalgia. Again, it's on my reread list. But these were the first times. So I really loved, and I still do, urban fantasy. I'm not much of a historical fiction fan. Probably The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is pretty much the only book that's historical fiction. And these two are about fairies, but kind of set in a very gritty, modern setting, and they're really dark. And I think that, they've got advisory adult content on the back. Again, they're quite gritty, they're quite dark. You've got found family elements in this. You've got a main character who isn't necessarily always that likable either. But I really like them. I like the kind of darker aspect of this sort of fairy tale, fairy realm, and fairies aren't all cutesy jumping about sweet things, and it really kind of goes into the darker side of fairy, which I really loved about these. And then the last kind of series is the newest edition, and literally brand new, like the last month or two, is Nevernight, the Nevernight Chronicles. Now, I had a rocky relationship. I DNF'd this book the first time, but now you can see I've got all three there. I just finished Dark Dawn. It broke me. And I adore the series. Mia Corvair is the epitome of a dark, complex, really fucked up main character, and she is tough, and she has her own moral code you might not agree with. Book 2 has that gorgeous relationship between Mia and Ashleen. I just adore this. Jay Kristoff also has the distinction of being the only male author on this list. So apparently I prefer female authors, but it is wonderful. It is bloody, and there's lots of fighting and there's lots of action, but also there's a lot of character work and kind of delving into emotion, which I really love. And yeah, Nevernight, it's amazing. The next one we shall go to, let's go to kind of fantasy, horror, sci-fi. So my favorite horror book of all time is this one, Poppies, Brats, Lost Souls. would go into the top like 3 of my all-time favorite books. This book I read again back when in the late 90s. And this was a follow-on from Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles. And then I read this book and I have to say it blew those out of the water for me. The writing is incredible. It's so lyrical. What I loved about this as well was my first encounter with really overtly queer characters on the page, and certainly in this genre as well. This also bucks the trend in terms of female-led books, because there are a couple of female characters, but they're quite inconsequential really to the story. These are all male characters, but they are written with such beautiful tenderness and sensitivity and depth of character, and also, you know, these gorgeous kind of queer relationships running through it between these guys. It is phenomenal. It is lyrical. It is, again, on my reread list. I will talk about it more. I adore this book. The next one, again in that horror fantasy sci-fi genre, is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. This book I think was the first one I read this year. I loved it. I freaking loved it. I didn't think I was going to love it quite this much. So killer mermaids, sounds fun. But what I also loved about this is that it's very, female character led, but strong, intelligent. You know, we've got scientists. I think we've got far too few books where we've got strong, intelligent female scientists as the main leads in books. And I really love Mira Grant to write another book kind of almost in the series, if she could. And definitely has also made me want to pick up the Wayward children's series, which is Sean Maguire, which is the other name that Mira uses to write. But yeah, if you like a horror sci-fi mixed with incredibly strong, cool female characters, a bit of science, and a female-female romance, pick this one up. It is great. The next one is sci-fi. This one here, Slow River by Nicola Griffith. This is the epitome of character-driven sci-fi. Again, the writing is gorgeous. This really turned me on to reading more and more sci-fi. And it is this relationship between these two women, but also what's happened in their past. They are incredibly morally all over the place, which I loved. This was this kind of family element, family history element, of figuring out your family's not quite what you thought they were, which is really interesting. And there's a bit of a conspiracy type of thing in here as well. But what I love is these characters, again, these really complex, grey, morally all over the place characters. Gorgeous, gorgeous writing as well, Nicola Griffith. Beautiful job. And then the last one in this category is The Lost Coast by Amy Rose Capetta. Again, I love Amy Rose Capetta's work, all of their work. Currently, this is probably my favourite. So this incorporates a lot of the things that I love. I love witches. I love a group of female characters. So this is a group of female teenage witches who are best friends and lovers. And there's a sort of a mystery element, but what I love about this book is the characters, the characterization, the relationship between these girls, and also the way this book is written. It's written in a very unique, beautiful, almost poetic way. It's hard to describe, but it's really beautifully written. And I'm going to read it again. So. And then the last bit, we're almost there. It being non-fiction November, is going to be non-fiction books. So I have 3 books here that I do love non-fiction books. I love good non-fiction books. It's probably one missing off of this, which I will say at the end. But yeah, I love a good non-fiction book. So the first one I've got here is Courtney Love, The Real Story by Poppy Z. Bright. So Poppy Z. Bright, this is with cooperation by Courtney Love, their friends. Poppy Z. Bright interviewed Courtney, and this tells Courtney's story. And I adore Courtney Love. I have a gorgeous watercolour painting that a friend did for me. I have a tattoo dedicated to Hole, one of my favourite bands. I just love everything about her. Maybe not the healthiest role model, but I think she's a phenomenal woman and she has phenomenal strength. And as a woman, phenomenal complexity as well. And I adore this book. I've read it several times. As you can probably tell. It is fantastic and interesting and wonderful, and I love Courtney. Then the other book, the second book, is this one here. It's Book of Shadows by Phyllis Currit. And again, I said witches and witchcraft is one of my favourite things. This is a real life book, so it is a modern witch reveals the wisdom of witchcraft and the power of the goddess, and this is actually a true story. This is Phyllis's journey to Wicca and witchcraft, but it reads like a novel. If someone didn't tell you that it was real, you would think it were a novel. Wonderfully written, so interesting. Again, I read this years ago. It's due another reread. And just Phyllis telling her story is fascinating. just fascinating. And there's a second book, which I also love, which I didn't pull off my shelves, called The Love Spell. And again, it kind of continues Phyllis's journey and story into kind of Wicca and witchcraft, but fascinating, and I absolutely love it. And then the last book, if I had to pick, so actually, I will end on this book. I'll tell you the other book that I forgot to pull off my shelves, which is actually a man, is Scar Tissue by Anthony Kiedis. I adore Anthony Kiedis. He is so interesting. He's the lead singer of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, if you don't know, and his autobiography, Scar Tissue, is phenomenal. There are a lot of references to drug taking, so if you're sensitive to that, but it is a fascinating read. Again, it reads like a novel. I think that is his real life, really, but it is wonderful. It's another one that I love. But we're going to end on, if I had to put my head on a block, fear of death, and say what my favorite book of all time is, it's this one. So it is Just Kids by Patti Smith, and I treated myself to this glorious illustrated hardcover edition. So I might see if I can find a picture while I'm talking. So this is illustrated with all the pictures in it. Patti Smith, if you don't know, she is a singer and a writer. And Robert Mapplethorpe, who is the other person on this cover, was a artist and a photographer. And this is the autobiography of how Patti wrote this, of how they met and their life up until Robert's death. And it is so phenomenally beautifully written. Again, it reads like a novel. You would never, if someone didn't tell you this was real, you would think it was a novel. It is heartbreaking. It is beautiful. It is this incredible exploration of friendship and love and overcoming everything to have your creative outlet and live the life you want to live, and just be who you want to be, and express yourself. And it is gorgeous, and I will be doing an entire video on Patti Smith, because Patti Smith is also probably my favourite author, just in terms of the way that she writes. It's beautiful. And this book is just, it means the world to me. I've read it so many times, and also I've given it to so many people. I tend to sort of hand this book out like candy. Not this edition, obviously, but it's just incredible, and I love it. And I will do a separate video on my love of Patti Smith, and particularly this book. So that is it. Oh my God, I can't believe my throat's it's burning and my throat is on fire. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you love any of these. If you don't, if you have any recommendations, I'd love to know what your favorite book of all time is, if you've got one. And I will speak to you all again very soon. Bye-bye.